Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Brad Malm, Director of Creative Services at Channel Bakers, Scanmarker's e-commerce and retail media agency. Brad, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. We were so impressed with the Scanmarker case study, from the results to just the extraordinary way in which you were able to come up with so many cross-category ideas. We're really so pleased to have you here.
Awesome. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for making some time for me today. This is great.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, listen, why don't we jump right in? I think that's usually the best way to do it. So how do you engage with your audience creatively? Because you're doing something very special. So let's hear it from you.
Yeah, I mean, that is a super broad topic, right? So I think if we were to boil that down, the essential component is just crafting a compelling story, right? And that can be done through several different types of vehicles, whether that's copy, design, experience, audio, or video. But no matter the vehicle, the target's always the same, right? You want to establish a connection between your audience and the brand or product. So to do that, we need to be relevant and to have a fairly robust understanding of what their needs are or what their preferences are, and to demonstrate how the product scratches that itch. Or in some cases, we need to be able to look around the corner and show them a way to solve a problem that they didn't even realize they had, right? So I think that's when you really hook an audience. That's where the magic happens, is when you create that, now that I see it in my life, I can't unsee it, right? That's the moment.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And you did a marvelous job of that with Scanmarker. And I think we should mention that at least in my mind, you have a tremendously difficult job, because you're operating primarily in a very competitive area of online retail. And so you really have to bring things to people. And we know that the creatives now in our digital world are dabbling in PDP, custom DSP banners, brand stores, custom landing pages,
All the things. Yeah.
everything. So what, to you then, talk a little bit about sponsored brand videos and how they fit into this. Are they part of the mix, or are they the answer that brings that magic out?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I'm going to back up there for just a half a second, because you mentioned something at the beginning of that question, which was, we always start with the destination. You mentioned PDP or brand stores, and there's other places like custom landing pages, et cetera. But we always want to ensure that those destinations are optimized and polished for conversion. Performance and conversion is always going to suffer if your destination lacks engaging content, right? So relevant and meaningful messaging or educational elements are required. And once that's dialed in, then we can start advertising and having that conversation. And that's really where sponsored brand video comes in. There are several, advertising opportunities, but video is king.
So is that why, in your mind, if video is king, that it actually means it has a bigger impact on shoppers, more so than any other advertising tool? Is it all about sight, sound, and motion?
You know what, honestly, I think for that, we just need to let the data speak for itself. Video has been proven time and time again to have greater impact, right? There was a poll that was done by Incivia recently. It was viewers retain 95% of messaging when they watch it in a video. Another one was 84% of people say that they've been convinced to buy a product or service by watching a brand's video, and that was done by Wise Owl. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news. I'm sure you have, Deborah, but Instagram has just announced that they're going to be shifting over to a more video-focused strategy, much to the chagrin of certain influencers. But that's because viewers want to see more video content. That's what they engage with. Video allows you to really show off your product or service in a way that static ads just don't. There's just so much more runway for storytelling. And as we've already mentioned, people retain video content much better. Also, just side note, when was the last time you forwarded a static ad to somebody versus sending a video?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that you really made that work with Scanmarker, because I know that there were some issues in terms of, my goodness, this amazing product does so many things,
Mm,
and how do you bring that out? Um,
right.
I do want to talk about some of the creative elements that you actually quite specifically incorporated into Scanmarker's pop of color video to really make it stand out as a winner. I'm also curious though about time frame.
Mm.
You know, do people want videos of a certain time? But anyway, just tell me a little bit about, I seem to have a talent for asking multiple questions at once, but when something is fascinating, you want to learn so much about it. So you just start anywhere.
That's fine. I'll do my best to tackle all the questions you threw at me, Deborah. Okay. So the first question I think you asked was, what were some of the elements that made Scanmarker stand out? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, for that, we really wanted to lean into the youthfulness of the product. After all, this was a product that functions mainly as an educational tool, right? Scanning textbooks and doing translations and things like that. It's more of a studying tool. And so telling a story using college age students kind of seemed like a no-brainer. But we also wanted to key in on certain things that were relevant to that age group, right? So relevancy is always a huge thing to focus on. And so one of the things that I think made it win was that relevancy aspect of it. We all know platforms like TikTok and Instagram are, they play a major role in the lives of the Gen Z audience. So we based the concept of the video off of something that was kind of trending on TikTok at the time, which was like this dropping or passing of an object between frames or screens, right? And so we wanted to kind of key in on that trend because we knew that it was going to resonate with that audience. And so I think looking at things like that, what's out there, what's trending, what are some things that you can tap into to get that engagement from the audience that you're trying to interact with. And so I think that's probably one of the reasons why it was a big hit.
Well, you mentioned TikTok, and I had the question about time, because sometimes if video is so powerful, is there a connection? I mean, I realize that the real connection is about the creativity and the messaging and the relevance, but but can you do something in 10 seconds and 30 seconds and 60 seconds that can be compelling? Or is there a preferred time length? I would assume with the group that with the younger group, with the Gen Z, probably they got it in a faster amount of time.
Yeah, not only is it possible, but it's almost a requirement nowadays. Doing things in a faster, time frame, getting your messaging out there sooner. Absolutely, you can, and especially on things like sponsored brand video, it's almost kind of a price of admission, right? Where you don't have a lot of time to hook your audience, to get their attention. They're searching, they're looking for a product. Hey, there's this flashy little video playing in search. That's cool. Let me take a look at it for a second and see what they're trying to show me. And if it's not engaging, if it's not something that they're really interested in, or it doesn't have content that's grabby, they're going to tune out. And so you really only have a few seconds. And so there are some best practices that we do employ when doing sponsored brand video. Some of those things would include showcasing your product right up front, and then getting your main key takeaway established within the first few seconds, because a lot of times that's all you have.
Oh, that's very interesting, and I think that's helpful
Yeah.
because so often there seems to be if there's an elaborate story, sometimes it takes a little while to get to the punchline. So it's that
Yeah.
old journalistic style, get that first sentence to talk about just about everything that's important.
It's a massive shift away from like national, broadcast campaign storytelling, your Super Bowl commercial where you have 30 seconds of the audience's time to establish a story and then hit them at the end with the punchline. You don't have that. You actually need to front load your videos now if you're doing it on sponsored brands. So that's kind of that's the main difference between the two.
Oh, no, this is all fascinating. This is really very interesting. We were talking about time in a different concept, in terms of length. What about the time it took you to put this together? Because it seems that, and I forget, was some of this was done during COVID, or I mean, this has been an ongoing program, but I know
Yeah.
that someone once said to me that, long-term planning now equals 2 weeks. So, I'm always curious as to how long this takes.
Yeah. So there was some run up to getting the account set up and understanding, kind of all the mechanics of where Scanmarker needs to live. But by the time it got to my creative team and my department, we kind of had a better understanding of how this needed to look and where it was going to live and breathe within Amazon. So by that point, it was a matter of coming up with a concept that we felt was a strong story and narrative that would fit the brand well. And so once we had that concept dialed in, it really was about 2 to 3 weeks to kind of execute the final video. We have our own studio in-house, so we shot everything internally. And then we work with, kind of your usual suspects when it comes to casting. So we have some folks that we typically tap on the shoulder through various agencies and stuff. So we had a pretty good understanding of who we wanted based on the demographic that we were going after. And so that was pretty streamlined. And then the thing that took, I think, probably a little bit longer was the 3D aspect of it. We didn't have CAD files for the product. So we actually had to generate the 3D aspects of it by measuring the device and then getting our in-house 3D designers to actually model this thing from scratch and then implement it into the video and the narrative. So I think that was probably the bit that took just a little bit longer, was that, crafting from scratch element. But I think all in, we're about 3 weeks start to finish from pre to post.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing how quickly things work these days. It really is. So, how about challenges? Were there any things that you faced, that were difficulties, or maybe some things that you hadn't expected?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, like you don't always anticipate what regions certain creatives or assets might end up living in. And so the assumption is that I'm going to create it for one region and that's where it's going to live, but not understanding that, hey, they're going to sell in other markets. It's going to be adopted in other regions. So thinking around that corner, I think, was a little bit of a challenge at first. And some of the things that we had to consider were making sure there were no dead giveaways, that this was like specific to a certain region, but could live and breathe across multiple regions without feeling out of place. So I think that was probably one of the challenges. But I think the team did a great job executing against it.
Yeah, no, certainly. As you said before, it let the data speak for itself, and in this case, the results very much spoke for themselves. So, what learnings would you take from this in terms of making the pop of color video when you do other sponsored brand videos? I mean, you gave us some really interesting information about, you've got to front load things, you've got to get your message out there. Things, depending on the generation, things have to be quicker. And I love your story about making sure things cross regions. That may not be as easy for other products, because this was one of those rare products that spoke for itself by doing and by showing.
Right, right.
But any other advice, any other learnings?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the big ones already, right? I think that the team did a great job focusing on some of the key rules around creating successful sponsored brand videos. Show the audience the product and communicate the main, key takeaway within the first 5 seconds. We talked about how shoppers have a shorter attention span these days, especially as they're searching for a product, right? They just want to get through and find what they're looking for. So you want to deliver the key takeaway faster than you would a national TV spot. Keeping things lively and engaging. We talk about how it's a pop of color. Well, we chose bright poppy color for a reason, not only because the product is colorful, but also when you're on a page with a lot of distraction, there's a lot of products, you're going to have a lot of distraction widgets, advertisements. You want to draw their attention on the page so that they are looking at your ad, right? So I would say that even that, making sure that your visuals are engaging, they're bright, there's movement going on to try and capture the attention and keep their attention there. And that's going to help with retention. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish. I didn't mean to jump in there. Yeah.
No. I was just going to say, so, keeping things lively and engaging so that they dwell on the ad, right? And that's going to help them with retention and retaining the information that you're trying to give them.
No, good point. One thing that I find very interesting, and I'm curious as to how your role translated this. It's a revolutionary product in many ways. It's an Israeli company that came up with a wonderful way to use a highlighter that can also scan any kind of copy and translate it and help students retain it, or just amazing. It's an amazing product, but at the same time it kind of defied categorization. It had so many more attributes than being in the highlighter department. It's a funny place. Now, when you were given the creative brief to make that come to life, I mean, you've done a great job doing that TikTok dropping and passing on so that people saw all of that. But that had to be challenging. What went through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to make sure that one, it was pithy enough to where we got the message across quickly and highlight all the different key aspects of it that we wanted people to take away, right? And you're right, it's not a scanner, it's not necessarily a highlighter, it's not necessarily just a translator. It's really kind of all these things. There's really no great way to categorize it, right? And so we just kind of leaned into that. We said, you know what, we're just going to show its uniqueness, right? We really want people to gravitate towards how versatile this thing is and how awesome it is, and give people the spark of, oh, how could I use this? Where could I use this in my day-to-day, right? And so I think that was the main objective, throughout the course of the video.
Well, any tips on working with Amazon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're hearing more and more how moderation can be a little bit tricky to navigate. And so, I would say, when in doubt, follow policy. We've been seeing moderation get more and more strict with their adherence to their policies that they have laid out on their website. But Amazon does a great job of posting those policies to help creators be efficient when planning and creating their content. And I say that intentionally because you really want to pay attention to your creation, or I should say, you really want to pay attention to how you're planning your creative, and making sure that you're doing so in the context of following Amazon policy. So one thing that we see happen a lot is folks will get caught up in certain things that they do maybe for broadcast television. And that doesn't really work out so well on the Amazon platform. And so they have safeguards in place that they put on their website to help you navigate those things. Follow those, right? They're there to help you. Otherwise, you can kind of get stuck in, moderation limbo. I'd also say follow the specs, the file sizes, aspect ratios. They're very specific about that type of stuff. Again, you don't want to get caught up in purgatory just because your file size wasn't correct, or you didn't have the right bit rate for your video. So those are the kinds of things that you really want to pay attention to. The last thing I would say is there's plenty of resources out there on Amazon's, own advertising.amazon.com portal. There are guides that are available. There are videos that you can watch to help, kind of navigate some of those moderation issues. Just familiarize yourself with them. It's actually not that complicated. You just got to take the time to look.
Oh, like everything else, and I know that as an e-commerce agency, you are really working with a lot of retailers beyond Amazon, whether it be Walmart or Target or Best Buy and so on. So I'm assuming that at some point there'll be some level of compliance or moderation that kind of crosses all of the categories and all the different lines. But on a bigger, a little bit bigger topic, talk a little bit about our constantly changing digital landscape and how that has an impact on the kind of work that you do.
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I think it's clear that, well, one, video is not going away anytime soon, so I think we're safe there. But I think it's going to continue to evolve and take different shapes, especially as technology evolves. For example, video may end up looking like, 360 shoppable experiences where you can navigate around a video and rotate around the room. And maybe there's hotspots and buttons that you might be able to shop and just kind of create more engagement. So I think the way that video is interacted with may change down the line, again, as technology evolves. But I would also say that, if you're not engaged in video right now, especially sponsored brand video, you're kind of falling behind. And your brand is not getting the attention or the performance that it deserves.
And do you think that's for every kind of brand, including a service or a B2B brand? I mean, I guess it's just in how you present it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think video is one of those universal mediums that just does a better job of helping you tell your brand story.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful advice. So, all right. So, any parting thoughts, whether it be about we have talked a lot about sponsored brand video. Any parting thoughts about what's next for Scanmarker? What's next for you? Or any thoughts on the future of the entire advertising landscape?
World domination, Deborah.
Good to know.
Yeah. No, I'm just excited for for what comes next. I feel like there are so many opportunities out there, and retailers keep finding new ways to reach audiences, and there's always seems to be something new to gravitate to or to latch on to, whether that's video or some other form of advertising. But the one thing that I know is a constant is that I think marketers are safe in this environment, right? People want to know that, there's so much content out there that people need to know and want to know about. And that just gives us as advertisers and marketers, just more and more opportunities to tell stories, whether that's through video or other means.
Oh, you've really brought it full circle. And I hope the next time that we talk about how you tell stories in a compelling manner through video, that maybe we'll even touch on the metaverse.
Let's go.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure. Congratulations again. And we look forward to hearing from you again. You've offered some great insights.
Great. Thank you so much, Deborah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories.